Economic inequality, racism, and the war on drugs, our judicial system in a frenzy. Do we rely too heavily on the courts to solve our problems? Next on Bay Sunday, California's justice system in this. What does the future hold? Then, a look at an innovative program that matches delinquent teens with a personal mentor. And Asian comics strut their stuff at the Color of Funny Multicultural Comedy Competition. That and more next on Bay Sunday.
Good morning. Welcome to Bay Sunday. I'm Barbara Rogers. In these times, well, the Color of Funny is a multicultural comedy competition which showcases the Bay Area's finest ethnic stand-up comedians. Many of the comedians use humor to take some of the sting out of negative stereotypes. Here's a sample.
It's been a bad streak right now with women. Yeah, very bad. Nowadays, the only way to get a woman to put her arms around me is to take her to a nice, fancy restaurant, look her in the eyes, and do this. And my uncle, another comic, the great Shecky Kato, came up to me. He said, Kevin, you feel depressed about love and life. Go to church, get that spiritual lift. All right, I'm Buddhist. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I find it pretty comforting knowing the religious symbol that I pray to is more out of shape than me. You ever have somebody give you directions when you're having sex? It's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? Oh, Kevin, a little bit to the left. A little bit to the right. Now walk out the door.
Well, joining me now are Al Manalo, comedian and producer of the Multicultural Comedy Competition, and comedian Margaret Cho. Thanks so much for being with us today. How did the Multicultural Comedy Competition get started?
Well, originally it was a concept we came up with, me and the Ohana Cultural Center, and we talked about having an Asian American comedy competition.
Because up to that point, you hadn't seen much of Asian American comedy.
Right, and we were trying to bring that out, and it just evolved into, involve more people, actually. So we decided to make a multicultural comedy competition, stress the multicultural part. That way we can educate people also, as well as entertain them.
Now, Margaret, I've seen you and you're very funny. And you use a lot, you draw a lot on your family and real sort of ethnic stereotypes of Asians in your comedy. How does your family respond to that?
I think that they really like it. I mean, they don't really understand why it's funny because it's sort of like, I mimic them in a way that it's exactly them. I'm not making a huge caricature. It's actually their character, and so it's kind of strange for them to watch. Say, well, you know, that's how I am really, so that's not funny. That's not funny at all. So but they really like it, and it's exciting for them because I think it's exciting for just because they've never seen anybody do anything about their lives, and just Asian Americans in general get very excited when they see me because they've never seen anybody talk about, you know, what goes on in their homes. And I think our experiences are very similar because being Asian American, it's like you're sort of growing up, you know, in two cultures. And so I think everybody has a similar experience.
Now, you mentioned, Al, there's a form of education here. One of the things I think sometimes it's hard for people to understand is why ethnic comedians who, if they were not comics, would be insulted by people doing some of the things and using some of the stereotypes at them, why they use that in their comedy. I think, can you sort of explain why? Because you see black comedians, Latino comedians, they do draw very heavily on stereotypes in the comedy.
Yeah, well, there's two ways you can approach it. You could either try to perpetuate the stereotype and go for an easy laugh, or tell the truth. I mean, you know, if you tell the truth, unfortunately, with some stereotypes, they're born from a grain of truth, you know, and then they're exploded into all these different fallacies. The thing about the comedy that we're trying to show is that we're trying to show more of a sincere comedy, to bring these stereotypes out and redictate them, I guess you could say, or
redefine them.
Redefine them, right? To show them. I mean, I do this joke about the Filipinos eating dogs and how how they always talk about Filipinos eating dogs.
See, there's a good example of what I'm talking about.
And it's not true, you know, it's true. But then I'll turn it around and in my routine I talk about, well, I'll have fun with this stereotype instead. People think we eat dogs. I've never had a Chihuahua casserole or anything like that. But I'll go to a pet store and like stare at the cages for hours just to have fun, you know. Stuff like that.
See, and it almost makes you feel a little embarrassed. You say, oh, I'm laughing at this, but should I really be laughing at this? You know, because it sort of is sort of one of the things that people say that they use in a negative way against Filipinos.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing is, sometimes you have to take that particular stereotype and expand it so wide, and you know,
so
to make it look ridiculous.
How absurd it is.
Yeah, right. To make it, to show people how ridiculous it really is.
When did you know that you were funny enough to be a comedian? How old were you?
Probably my first years in college. Actually, when I was a kid, I always wanted to perform. You know, I used to actually lip sync to Lou Rawls. Believe it or not, ask my brothers.
You're starting to look like you have that kind of voice.
That's why I had to lip sync it, you know, and I guess it was funny, you know. But
how about you, Margaret? When did you know?
I still don't know.
Well, you make people laugh.
Yeah, I guess.
So you must know that you're funny.
Yeah, I feel like, getting back to the stereotypes, I wanted to say something about that. I think that in humor, in comedy, you always try to find a common ground with the audience. And unfortunately, all people know about our cultures are stereotypes sometimes, which is why we need to talk about them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us. And we'll tell people that the Color of Funny competition takes place July 16th and 30th at the Ohana Cultural Center in Oakland. For more information, call 510-658-1868. And that is it for this another edition of Bay Sunday. We're glad you joined us, and we hope you will be here again next week. Hope there are plenty of laughs in your week ahead, and to get you started, we leave you with more from the Multicultural Comedy Competition. Goodbye. This is from last year's competition.
I'm Filipino and I'm proud. Filipino people are proud. Yeah. We got pride, fried rice, fried chicken. When we come to this country, we speak great English until we panic. The other day, I was with my uncle. There was an earthquake, and the damn bottle started shaking, and they fell off. And the white guy says, "You, whoever you are, whatever you are, touch that bottle, you gotta pay for it." Oh, what they gonna do? I was standing in the bottom corner.
Do your thing in your own way. You follow a different story. Bay Area love. You know just what to do. Your spirit shining through. Well, there's only one you, and there's only one you, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rosie Chu, and welcome today to Bay Area People. Now, no one really likes stereotypes. They're offensive, largely untrue, and very isolating. But for many minorities, stereotypes have become their identity. Today, we're going to be talking to comedians who are trying to break stereotypes through their comedy, and that'll be a little bit later on in the show. But first today, we will be meeting two women who are trying to bring awareness and break African-American stereotypes, and that's through their antiques and memorabilia, even when it comes to dealing with stereotypes. Breaking cultural stereotypes is Oakland's Ohana Cultural Center, and they're having a second annual comedy competition, and it's called The Color of Funny. Joining me now is Al Milano. He's the producer of this year's competition. Next to Al is Clarence Sterling, who is last year's second runner-up. And comedian Margaret Cho is next to me, and she will be a judge at the finals of the competition a couple of weeks from now, right? Okay, thank you for being here.
Weeks, yeah.
Pretty soon. Now, this is the second annual, so tell me a little bit about it. I think outside of the Asian community, it hasn't been all that well known. It's getting more notoriety this time around. And Al, since you're the producer, tell us what happened.
Well, last year was a huge success. There was a few articles that came out on it, and people were surprised to see a multicultural comedy type competition. Although there was different views of it, some people thought it was a minority quote-unquote competition, which I couldn't stand. So this year we're trying to focus a little bit differently. Stressing that it's a multicultural comedy competition. In other words, although it's this color of funny, color doesn't necessarily mean color lines. Last year we had some people of a Cherokee Irish background. This year we have Jewish background. We're even welcoming people from the homosexual community. the gay community, even the disabled.
What you're doing is asking them to use their culture and their
their
common talents,
lifestyles,
right?
their culture,
right.
exactly. Talking about a different perspective in a sense of the kind of lifestyle or cultural background that they're living in.
But going to this event will be one of the times when you actually see minorities, and particularly Asians, since Asians are not known to be comedians
Right.
and being involved in comedy, to see them use their ethnicity. So I'm going to ask the two of you, Margaret and Clarence, both of you are comedians, as well as Al, actually. How do you use ethnicity as part of your comedy?
Well, it's part of going, sort of showing a different point of view. Mainly the people that come to comedy clubs, I'm generalizing, but they're mostly, you're basically performing for white audiences. And my experience in the past, the reason I started getting involved in comedy was I would go to comedy clubs and see basically white men talk about these, very stereotypical things about, very humiliating, talking about Asian women, and sort of the sexual stereotypes that go along with being an Asian woman. And, sort of making fun of Asians, really strange things like about driving and eating dogs or whatever, things that are really not true, and it frustrated me to the point where I wanted to change that. I wanted to go out there and sort of show them what it's really like to be Asian in America, and that's the basis of my comedy.
And since you're Asian and since you're a woman, has it been tough breaking in?
Not really, because people are very interested to hear what I have to say. There's nobody out there like me, and I think that that's really helped me, or rather, it hasn't made it difficult. I mean, what has made it difficult for me is just like personal things, like watching other comedians continue to reinforce stereotypes in front of me and say, well, it's just a joke, but it's not. That's, that's where the violence starts, at the seed of it. Like when you're able to laugh at somebody, to humanize them, that's where racism starts. That's where hate starts,
It's
and that's very
ignorance,
dangerous.
Right? It's that ignorance, and that's that's what we're trying to do, is to, through comedy, educate people actually, and get rid of that type of ignorance, because it's that type of ignorance that breeds the racism.
Who are the kinds of people that would show up at your comedy competition? Are they young people? Are they ethnic people?
Yeah, we have a wide mixture of people that come. You're talking about competing or audience members?
Audience members.
Audience members, we get a wide variety. Actually, the reason why it was so successful is we actually had people come up after the show saying, this is something different. And these are people who love seeing stand-up comedy, who would go to a mainstream comedy club and would find that problem that Margaret just talked about, seeing other people trying to do erasers or perpetuating these other stereotypes, have no idea what they're talking about.
Now, Clarence, you're Filipino-American.
Yeah, I've been...
Do you use your Filipino ethnicity, if you will?
As a matter of fact, I'm one of the first Asian comedians for the last 14 or 13 years that started out here as an Asian Filipino-American. And they were talking about, in those days it was different. I was the only one fighting out there. And now, they used to laugh at us and make fun of us a long time ago, but now they got to pay us because we're funny.
But isn't part of it that if you have the talent, that ultimately it's just the talent of being funny or being a good comedian? Doesn't that override the sexual and the ethnicity problems?
There will always be a problem. There will always be a problem. It's just the way you take it. It's just what kind of audience you have out there and who you sell it to and who buys it.
Now, understandably, the Bay Area is so diverse that you should be accepted more here.
Yeah, we are more accepted here. I'm finding out, and Margaret, you get to travel. How is it now?
Well, I'm accepted wherever I go, just because people want to see different things now. People are tired of hearing about, whatever, relationships, men and women, dogs and cats, whatever. People want to hear something different, something like they want to. The reason people go out to see entertainment is to escape from their lives. And that's why it's so easy, I think easier for us, because we are so different from the audience that's out there. And not only that, when we do perform in front of Asian audiences, it's so exciting because they've never seen entertainment about their lives. They've never seen a play on their lives, which is why it's so fulfilling for us to perform for them.
But can the non-Asian community understand where you're coming from, if there's cultural humor that you're using, do they understand that?
They can appreciate it, but they just don't have necessarily to have to understand it.
It can still be funny, but they don't have to.
That's where the line is drawn. If you can make people laugh, everybody can understand it.
That's the only difficulty about it, though, because you will. It's funny because here in the Bay Area, you work hard at polishing your act and really putting up a good 5-10 minutes of culturally affirmative material. You know, even in the mainstream clubs. And then sometimes you have to kind of sacrifice that when you go up to the boonies, you know, and do one-nighters at certain areas where they only want to hear, you know, sexual type jokes.
So how much of a repertoire do you have? Do you have one for minority people? Do you have one for non-minority, primarily non-minority audience? Do you have one for the big city, one for the small city?
I basically stay the same. I you know, I don't really change because my material is basically who I am and don't really change that. I mean, when I am performing for an all-Asian audience, say, I may get more specific in my references, maybe put in Korean words. I'm Korean American, so I may, you know, start speaking in Korean, do Korean jokes. As, you know, but it's not that different. I mean, I have a chance to be, you know, more personal there. Just because I know their lives a little bit more, but for the most part, I don't really change.
So this comedy competition, what are you looking for? You know, you're going to be a judge, Margaret. So what are you looking for?
I'm looking for somebody who's funny. That's the most important thing. And also somebody who is original, who is talking about themselves, basically. I'm looking for somebody who is not afraid to be vulnerable on stage and tell me their story. No matter what it is.
You mean like Pee Wee Herman? That's what you're looking for. You gotta break this. This is supposed to be a comedy interview. Everybody's so serious. What's going on around here?
Well, you know, comedians are never funny off stage, right?
But my God.
I mean, y'all very serious.
Jesus,
Al, you're the producer of this competition. Are you doing much stand-up comedy nowadays, or are you going behind the scenes now?
Yeah, well, actually a little bit of both. I was working more at colleges, and that's one reason why I found most of my audience is Asian American college students who are hip to that, you know. And interestingly enough, another facet of what we're talking about here is also the fact that, see, I was born here, born and raised here, being an Asian American, born and raised here, Filipino American, and Margaret also, you were born.
I was born in the Philippines.
With ceremony. And the thing is, it's funny being treated like a foreigner in a land that you were born in. See, and I tried. That's where most of my material comes out of, the fact that people actually literally ask me if I know how to speak English on the streets, stuff like that, you know. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to. I try to show when I'm on stage, is the fact that no, we're not. If I was born and raised here, I like baseball too, you know.
And that feeling is easily translatable. Everybody has had a feeling like they didn't belong.
Right.
And that's, I think, what makes our humor universal.
Okay, very quickly, who are your comedic role models, Margaret?
Myself. We don't have any role models.
There isn't out there that's anything like you. Okay. Clarence?
Like comedic role model? Margaret Cho.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
That's two.
No, I like Louis and I, some of the old Jonathan Winters.
Oh, sure.
Jesus.
Oh, he's a great funny man.
You know.
Yeah, these two are just, you know, I just started with...
No, nationally now. Come on, guys. Nationally speaking.
No, actually,
I made my own blunders.
I got started. Of course, Richard Pryor. When I was growing up, I heard a lot of Richard Pryor stuff. He was so angry, and he talked a lot about his ethnicity. Richard Pryor, and then early Eddie Murphy stuff, and Andy Bumatai of Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah, Bumatai.
We have to take a quick break. Okay, so stay put, and we'll be right back in just a minute. I have just enough time to say thank you to Al, Clarence, and Margaret.
Thank you.
And don't forget now, this is The Color of Funny, and it's August 7th. That's a Friday night at Laney College here in Oakland. That's the finals, and I think we'll have a wonderful time. So I'm looking forward to being there and to seeing that and seeing all of you. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you with another edition of Bay Area People next week. I'm Rosie Chu. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us this Sunday morning here on Channel 2. Stay tuned now for Saved by the Bell. Next.